So we're going to get started. Our first business is the governing document, which right now is the MOU. It's been 2 years since we first drafted and all of our 16 partners signed off on it. It's coming to an end. In that time, we established the Justice Resource Center, the programs operating under that, and we've been awarded the Safety and Justice Challenge and hard at work trying to implement strategies that will safely reduce the jail. In that time too, we were also invited into membership into the National Network of Criminal Justice Collaborating Councils. We're one of 32, I believe. And with that, had the opportunity to do some peer networking, learn about best practices and ways to improve efficiency, collaboration amongst partners. I think for me, working with you all these past 2.5 years, I've definitely seen that. Kim has food in her mouth, so I will not call on her. But when a point comes time to speak, can you briefly kind of talk about that last session we had with Vera? Were you hearing that one? Just the whole, yes you were, the whole conversation about where we were today until now and kind of what resonated with some of the Justice Resource Advisory Council partners. So the purpose that I want you guys to think about when framing the conversation about how do we create a new governing document is just building on the knowledge from across the nation that we want a well-functioning collaborating council. We want to make sure that there's shared responsibility and accountability across the system, ensuring that we're using effective trends that are occurring across the nation, and then effective ways and efficient ways to move forward. So these are a list of just resources that, have been put together, and I can send out the official document on that so you guys can see where the wealth of knowledge is coming from and why these recommendations are coming before you. So, again, the current state was an MOU style that meets monthly. The proposal is to create a bylaw structure that remains in place until the JRAC dissolves, if ever. So you don't have to keep renewing it every 2 years. Only thing we need to do is make amendments or addend the document, but it will be a living document that stays in place. A proposal to have the JRAC meet every other month, just to make sure that it can be kind of a top priority for us, and we're not meeting every month with things that haven't occurred or major changes haven't happened within the last month. I think it was recommended at maybe the last 2 meetings ago to appoint a chair that can help steer the JRAC responsible for facilitating and creating the agenda setting, working with the partners, and then presiding over the meeting and the steering committee that is also proposed. And the vice chair, so the chair, and we can do it anyway, the group first, these are just recommendations, but the chair can be appointed by the county manager and the vice chair voted on by by majority vote of the JRAC. And they're serving as a person that fills in when the chair is not available. Come on in.
How y'all doing?
Okay.
Got some good food? Yeah. Right there.
Any questions on this so far? Now what happens in the membership proposal? We've kind of explored this. I think the section 1 is membership by position. So we don't have to have signatures in place if all bodies are in agreement with it. The membership by position is essentially the person assumes membership based on their position, and at the time they end their position, they will no longer be a member of the JRAC. So usually the elected or positions related to the justice system. Then the second membership can be by representation. So there's a designee from that office that represents or have that person assigned. So they essentially appoint someone to attend. And that kind of happens now, like the local bar, Thomas serves in that capacity. For VIA, which is our regional management, is Donald Roos and Christy Advocacy will sub in for him. So it kind of happens organically. And one thing to add, to ensure more cohesive collaboration, is having a representative from the Coordinated Community Response on the JRAC. So the victim, kind of the domestic violence intimate partnership relationship can also be present, or that voice can also be a part of this. I think there's a lot of crossover in the meetings, and me and Diane are trying to do this to streamline things. And so essentially the Coordinated Community Response will designate a person to sit on the JRAC, and that's up to them. Does everyone know what the Coordinated Community Response is? Okay, so that's essentially the, I don't call it governing body, or the advisory body for the domestic violence, sexual assault, intimate partner, child abuse, elder abuse, family justice system leadership. Serving on that does include our DA, our sheriff's office, from the courts is Judge Keppel, the victim services departments, the police. I ain't shaking her head at me, so I'll make sure I get everybody. Yes. I think it's good, like the DA is present at those meetings, but he has his similar lens in this space too. So it would be good to have somebody appointed that may not have that criminal justice lens, but more of the system coordination and victim advocacy lens. Some to consider, we've talked also about inviting the city of Asheville. So it's up to the council and the city if they would like councilmen present, councilman or woman, or someone from the city manager's office. On ours, we do have a commissioner and a representative from the county manager's office. The third thing I think we've talked about, and we've gotten a lot of community, excuse me. We're getting a lot of like community requests to also be a part of the decision-making process. And so, like many other boards and commissions that the county has, it's essentially by appointment as well. And so having the opportunity to have shared decision-making with community members, the JRAC possibly nominating someone to serve in that capacity, and then be appointed by Buncombe County's Board of Commissioners. And those two members could serve for 2 years and a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. There are a few jurisdictions that do this. I think we've gotten real well at working with community, especially through the community engagement strategies through the Safety and Justice Challenge, through our programs and partnerships. So this is a recommendation as well. And I know there's some discussion about how the member is appointed. And much like the other boards and commission, it's usually through an application process, and then the group selects the nominees. Moving on to increase kind of priority project setting, and to make sure that the work continues between the every other month. Recommendation to have a steering committee. And so the steering committee is a small group that gets together, meet to talk about trends or things that are happening that are important, that they've learned or are interested in sharing. That group proposed to be monthly, and then can help move the work forward. And then the last thing is decision making. There's really no recommendation here. It's either by census, kind of what we've been doing, making sure all parties are in agreement, all members are in agreement, or we can move to a majority vote. The county attorney said he actually preferred consensus, and that's great, because you know majority, minority always have these negative connotations that everyone's voice isn't heard and honored. So the consensus, I guess, we don't formally vote, but I believe if we're not all in agreement, then we won't move forward, and that's kind of how we've been operating. Is that a fair way to suggest? Okay, so in summary, we have an MOU in place, 2-year term, 16 members that meet monthly. The proposed future state is a bylaw that occurs during the lifetime of the JRAC and just gets amended as needed to increase to 23 members with more representation from more than just justice stakeholders, but kind of that holistic approach to the criminal justice system. Creating a chair, vice chair, having an executive committee, and then meeting every other month. Open for discussion.
You want to take one item at a time and talk through it, or? Any initial thoughts on the recommendations?
Gotta do something because the MOU expires, so y'all let me know if y'all wanna do another MOU or what we need to do.
Tiffany, does increasing the members from 16 to 23, is that designed to bring additional stakeholders?
Thank you for your question. So essentially that would add the city. We've invited to participate in city manager's office, I should say, and as council person. But Deborah attended last meeting, and I think it was proposed the first time we did our MOU, but we didn't have consensus on that. And so I think there was interest again to put that proposal. Creating a space for health and human service. They were initially on the MOU, and I think there was a lot of transitioning happening, but it ties into that public health aspect and that behavioral health aspect, that kind of like the work we're doing with VIA and the intersection between criminal justice and health. And then adding in the domestic violence, intimate partner, sexual assault community. I think those are the only additional folks. Oh, and then the 2 community representatives.
So under this plan is strategic partnerships, are those sort of, is the theory that would be kind of a vague term, so it could be different members from?
Thank you. That's actually Buckingham Department. That's the department I sit in. Actually, Kim sits in and Rachel
So
serves on.
what are your stakeholders that are not government?
Like, not government as in,
Are there any positions that are straight community, and I'm just getting that,
yes, that'd be 2.
2 of them?
Unless, I mean, that's just, record could be 1, could be 5, could be 9. Danny, you were,
Me?
works for you? Did we miss anyone? Unintentionally, but is there anything that we need to consider? Juvenile justice in there, sorry. Yes, okay. I wouldn't think schools, if we're exploring the school to justice partnership, they could just be like this, part of my to the partnership committee, or do they necessarily need to be on this committee?
Yes, you think they should?
Yes.
Any thoughts from anyone? They were again, sorry. The schools?
Okay. Schools, okay. All right, membership, 1. About the moving from monthly to bi-monthly? Okay. Okay. Steering committee, how are we feeling about the steering committee idea?
So Tiffany, if the idea that the steering committee would meet, so the larger body would meet, every other month, and the steering committee would meet on the off months, what's the thought around that?
Probably in the beginning, every month, and then move to off months. But I think, and this is just my world of being a staff. I speak regularly with many of these offices, and they're speaking about each other too, so, but there's no formal way to have this discussion kind of together. We're bouncing around emails and talking and having phone conversation, but it might be more effective and efficient if we just set a time to meet at one time from staff logistical. Anyone be added? Anyone want to be added to the steering committee? Anybody else? I didn't think so.
No. You don't want to come to I see you in those.
So I walk into the jail?
All right.
Lunch somewhere else that day now.
Yeah, that's right, I can do that.
Y'all just definitely send me an email if y'all change, you know, if there's any other. We good with our voting structure of consensus, or do we want to move to majority or 2/3 vote?
So by consensus, you mean 100% of the people have to agree to move forward?
I'm in favor of both.
I think Todd's office is 40th.
Something they changed, some of the, go back to that subject. It says chief district court judge.
That,
and then you have
I think
Todd.
that is technically still accurate at this moment in time. The districts and courts are under 28 and the prosecutors are under 40.
That makes once again no sense.
Or Raleigh.
All Raleigh, no doubt.
I might be throwing another county in here.
Diane?
I was just gonna add about consensus. For the Coordinated Community Response Leadership Council, we operate on consensus, and I think it allows for just more rich dialogue and really making sure that any step that we take forward is one that we all agree upon. So I've seen it work really well in that model. Just gonna add.
I think if we go with consensus for person facilitating or running it, we need a way to get consensus. Right now, I'm just doing is head nods. And then getting an email or a phone call later, like, no, I don't agree with that. So if we could actually do some type of like pulse checking at the end of every decision, so that I'm clear when we all clear when we walk out the room, are we moving forward or are we not moving forward? And I think we gotta be honest with ourselves. It's okay to, we're not gonna agree with everything. And it's okay to be open and honest, and, cause we can figure out, sometimes it's about going back and figuring out what part of this proposal doesn't work and how can we get everyone aligned to move forward.
I just have this is my first time here, and standing in only for Judge Hill, so I haven't been a part of your discussions, but I have been a part of JAG, which then transferred over to this organization, and I just have a hard time visually understanding that a group of individuals, regardless, would be telling an agency how to run their office. Like, a consensus is something you can operate and still have the authority of that particular agency to maintain what they believe. I don't know if you could have this agency say, no, we're gonna do it this way, and have, for instance, Judge Hill, under a circumstance, say, this is how we're gonna run a court. He still is gonna have the autonomy, regardless of this body. So I just don't know in my mind how that actually works. You can't tell an agency, you can't tell the clerk's office how to do their job. You might want to propose something, or the sheriff's office, but they still have the autonomy, and this agency, this group, can't change that. So I just.
That's a good point. In our last MOU, it says that. So I think we should add it to the bylaws too, like, purpose of this is not to infringe upon the autonomy of another office.
So then that really just goes to, it must be by consensus then, because you're still not gonna get, you're not gonna be able to remove the discretion of the person who has by statutory authority to do whatever it is that they're doing. So it seems like it's always gonna be by consensus, on some level. And I might not be seeing it in its full-blown operational ability.
As an advisory council, it's not a rule-making body, and it's not a law-making body, it's simply an
voting might work, I don't know how you wanna structure it that way, like if we say we all wanna take on a program, right? I think sometimes the county gets, like, we all have our abilities to navigate spaces, and so, I mean, like the adult misdemeanor diversion program, that was Todd's autonomy to dismiss programs dismiss charges based on whatever criteria. But we had to have all the stakeholders to buy in order for it to work. Because if the public defender's office didn't tell anybody about the program, or county in front of positions, yeah.
So you probably have to have consensus. Consider that.
And there will be a time though, as we get further into this, where voting is gonna be necessary, because you'll be in more detailed areas. And now I think we're sort of more broadly looking at things and trying to move things in that direction. Which was always gonna be what we're doing, but I think there will be specific times where voting's gonna be necessary, so.
We can put that in bylaws too, and just say that voting is an option available if needed or.
On request.
On request, yes.
The preference is consensus, however, any person could raise, call for vote, or call for it to be by vote.
Mhm.
If I can bring that.
Call for.
And I'm just watching, I'm not on this, you're here as the chief, so I'll let you clarify. I'm just.
What you mean about, I can't remember, but yeah, well, that's a good point to put in there. Oh, we didn't put Robert rules in here. Does anyone absolutely wants Robert rules in order, or motions? That's the way you conduct formal.
It's been calm so far, but I guess we've had to.
You're right, we don't. That is a good point, Richie.
So by doing this more formal, are you then adopting minutes? Is there gonna be a formal minutes? And so then you might want the rules then, because now names are gonna be a part of the conversation. And that's what people usually do the notion.
I think in according to Robert's rules, you don't necessarily have to put discussion points of who said what. You just put in discussion and then recommendations.
You got a motion, someone's motion.
Yeah, we did put motions in.
You gotta second it, you gotta name and second it, and then
Mhm.
you're actually creating a formal vote.
I did ask how the other boards, because we're obligated by open public meetings to post minutes. And I can look at the other boards and commissions and how they put their minutes and get their opinion and feedback too. Sure, you gonna say something? Okay.
I think we can also look at, other agencies, other jurisdictions that have the criminal justice coordinating councils and how they do it and how that works for them. I've seen it mostly voting is how you know, but you also determine who has a vote.
Mhm.
So 23 people, all 23, this is in my experience, don't have an official vote. The vote is usually by the office, like there's a judicial vote, there's a clerk vote, there's a sheriff vote. So that, there's a variety of ways to do it. So maybe we just look at what some of the other like bodies are doing. We might get some of everything with commissioners that we have across the county.
And what other jurisdictions?
Yeah, true.
I did look at Mecklenburg, Sacramento city. There's about 5 other Seattle jurisdictions and looking at all these things and some common themes. And we did, as part of the network council, do a survey. And so there was no I think most people had a chair, vice chair. That's the one thing everybody had. The way people had executive committees, it might have been half and half, so. Everybody's structure is different, and we'll go back and craft something based on feedback we got here. So for time purposes, is there any other discussions? Are we all comfortable moving forward, at least bylaw structure, so we don't have to keep revisiting every 2 years? And people don't have to sign off when, because right now, I think Sheriff Van Duncan is still on that initial MOU and maybe another county manager, so this will help alleviate that. next part, Rachel, unfortunately is out with a sick child, so, can't get me again. So, part of this is understanding kind of where we've been in the last few years and setting the tone for the future visioning of where we are. So when we did our MOU 2 years ago, these were our values: efficiency, integrity, transparency, inclusiveness, collaboration, and equity. And I can give specific examples of how I see us achieving these. I would like to hear from you all. So I'm gonna call on Kim about transparency. Can you give me an example of how the JRAC has started achieving or working towards transparency?
Well, I think just consistently having, information available. We have, through the Safety and Justice, we have the website, and then, where people can go and find that information. We are very inclusive in all the committees and try to make sure we have representation from everyone in each work group. I was prepared for the communication question.
Okay.
Do you want me to jump into
Yeah.
that? Our communication has increased so much over the past, couple of years. And we met as a group and we had our JAG meetings, but it's just become more formalized and we have minutes and follow through on things. And, the amount of communication that's going on now has increased. I think the quality of the communication has increased. And everybody is coming to the table and having real, honest conversations about things. That's what I see.
Can anyone speak to the collaboration?
I would say just as you're all here, it's a pretty good sign that you're collaborating. This is a really impressive group of individuals who are sitting here and taking on the task and study collaboration. Awfully quiet. But here.
Efficiency?
All except for the paper and the notebooks, I think we're pretty efficient. If it could all be electronic, I'd be happier.
Okay. And now things are available online too, so people, I just put the link in there.
Yeah.
You don't worry about printing stuff.
Yeah. We've got that whole printing initiative with the county, and if we could save toner and paper, and just go to the website, you know.
I'm on court party. Okay, what about equity? Any thoughts that we achieved, or is equity still a value?
Definitely, I think it needs to stay a value. And I think what I noticed more over the past couple of years is when we talk about projects and new initiatives, we're looking at them, through that lens of equity more than we ever have. And I think we've got a lot of, there's a lot more that we can do, but, yeah, there's a lot more.
And the goal, to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the Buckingham County criminal justice system with emphasis on strategies that are cost-effective, prioritize public safety, provide resources to law enforcement and the courts, and divert nonviolent offenders to supportive services and community-based outcomes. I would have one recommendation on the goal, but I want to see what other feedback is. So I would change the divert non-violent offenders to supportive services and just says, and something about just like justice involved or another, maybe not even the word divert, but something that ties in working with people to prioritize public safety and supportive services
more effective
And includes,
outcomes.
and includes everybody, that might be justice. No, it's not.
Rather than
You
the
mean-
sentence nonviolent, or the phrase nonviolent offender, justice involved.
Mhm.
And also
Yeah,
not
that
just criminal, cause we serve people that have
Right.
civil involvement.
Yeah, that's why I say justice involved, that's more inclusive.
Mhm. Okay. We actually do have some violent offender programs too that we talk about. All right, so essentially, this is wordy for me, but, and the goal about being here today and the next part is like making sure we're all on the same page as far as where our direction is. We have a lot of projects, a lot of ideas, and a lot of things underway. And in order for us to be effective and efficient, we gotta take inventory, get some focus areas about what we're focusing on and working on, and, considering what we need to consolidate and stuff. And I think when I first started, the fourth one is like possibly consolidating existing groups and committees. I think we did a little bit of that, but there might be some more opportunities to explore. We've actually grown probably some committees with the Safety and Justice Challenge. So just being more strategic about that. Any thoughts on these objectives?
On the racial equity, committee, and I know that we're gonna be asking this group to reconsider and we're making modifications on the statement. So when I look through all this, I don't see anything about racial equity or racial, so when you're asking a group to adopt what another committee is working on, I think it needs to be a part of your objective, because otherwise, why would we be asking you to, it's not part of your goal?
Right. So, and our value should tie into our objectives.
Well, you're saying your equity, and I don't
Mhm.
see it in your goals, and I don't see it in your objectives. As being a specific, I mean, a whole committee designed just for that issue, so how did that then become a part of a subcommittee of this organization if that's not even a part of your objective or goal?
Mhm. Good point.
You're reaching out to the community, you're asking the community for input on that particular issue.
I think community engagement is not even an objective on anywhere in here. I think that's a good point, and that can lead us into like what our focus areas are, and then tie that into the objectives and the goals and. Okay. So to Judge Young's point about making sure our objectives and our goals and our values are in alignment, we need to figure out what our focus areas are, create an action plan, staff will do all this, of course. And, it helps us with the framing of agendas and project support, and then kind of looking at what we're currently taking underway, and being sure we are still on the cutting edge of improving our criminal justice system. So with that being said, the next part of this is really taking stock and inventory, and what we'll have to do as staff is like help you all kind of evaluate what our existing services is, establish what we as a group feel like are priorities, and then assess and explore where we're trying to go. So, I guess our activity today is to look at current state, all of our programs. So I'm gonna ask for some participation here. Can everyone see what's on here? So, and they're in our, does everyone know what the sequential intercepts are? So they're listed in the intercepts, one kind of being, maybe not exactly, matter of fact, I'm not gonna do it. So intercept one is usually the diversion or the deflection, then there's jail, courts, reentry, and then this one off to the side is kind of supportive, they're not necessarily along the intercepts. So can someone point out which one may not be in the right place?
I would say, just a reminder, Tiffany, they added intercept 0,
Mhm.
and with like juvenile diversion, CIT, there's some things like even law enforcement, formal involvement.
So is this like,
I would put that at 0, couple years ago to recognize all the things that happen right before a person gets involved.
You mentioned CIT?
Yep.
Can you have that now, don't we? Or the Marcus? Can you add CIT? Okay. So Amy, we're gonna add CIT to intercept 0. Amy, can you also give me the top part?
And is this what we have or what we also might want?
Right now, this is current, what we have. So after intercept 0, which is crisis, so we have juvenile misdemeanor diversion. Do we know why that's on intercept 1?
0.
Yeah, 0, sorry. Do we know why that's on intercept 0?
It's like
System,
prevention.
Yes. Before they're officially charged. And CIT, same thing. What happens after CIT is different. Intercept 1 is law enforcement, correct? So they are,
Like an arrest, right?
yes.
So
So
the
it's-
jail-based one needs to, right?
Probably. So this is arrest. This is arrest. Where are our familiar faces?
What exactly is that?
What is
I know what that means, but like, what is the program that, like, what do we do with those zero and?
Zero, one, really.
What is the definition of familiar faces?
Well, I know what it means, but like, what is exactly is happening with them? You mean you're doing outreach to those familiar faces to prevent, is that what the work is?
Maybe in both 0 and 1, because I think it could fall with both hands.
So what's happening with familiar faces? Like what is, I think Chrissy's point is like, what is the program? Because then that will determine where it's at.
I think it could be either or both and. It can be before or.
Well, say we meet, talk about them, we talk about them.
You're a little taller than I am.
But that's all.
I think
Isn't familiar faces the focus of Amy's
Yeah.
safety justice strategy?
Familiar faces, they're familiar faces because they've been through so many arrests.
Right, I know that.
But we're
yeah.
trying to work on keeping them,
So you all are
getting them
meeting
help.
to talk about them, to
they
strategize
have,
how, okay,
Ron,
gotcha.
So where are they meeting at?
Amy knows all that, she's not paying attention.
She can tell y'all, but if we wanna know.
Maybe it's 0, I
I
guess.
think at this point, it's one, but it's still being charged, it's not being diverted.
Right, you're right.
But they're
You're
trying to
right.
work on that, that's what they're trying to, what can we do with this person? So he's arrested soon.
So essentially in Seattle, the lead program for them was familiar faces. So they were pre-arrest familiar faces.
Oh.
Now, that's where they would fall on 0.
We're still charging.
We're still charging our familiar faces.
So jail's one and-
So it would almost be like,
They're in
3 or
jail,
4,
right?
yeah.
And then they end up getting booked too.
it's like 3 or 4.
All right, so what is 2? Is that jail, Amy?
Yes. Post-booking.
Post booking.
Okay.
All right, our social worker in the public defender's office. Maybe supportive stuff? All right, so 2, this is before, this is law enforcement, this is post booking, this is, I guess, courts. So all of these are things that the county is supporting, so the behavioral health, social worker in the public defender's office. There's a specialized unit focused on, or in the prosecutor's office, focusing on the jail. There's a group focused on domestic violence. And then there's a person focused on the jail and the public defender's office. Pretrial supervision, does that still fall under 3?
I'm thinking it might be 2, post-booking.
But the court would assign them to pretrial and they'd be released at 3.
That's true.
You see them at
I thought the
two.
magistrates were now to do
Well,
that.
but where we're implementing now, yeah, the magistrates
Magistrates
are
are
going
allowed
to
to do
be.
it now.
So maybe this is like pretrial assessment, can you add that in pretrial? Thank you.
So
And
one is pretrial release and one is pretrial assessment.
This is pretrial assessment and then supervision, they're getting supervised, like right in here?
What's,
Cause you have
what is
two divisions
three?
kinda.
Two is post-booking, what's three?
3 is like,
Courts.
or 4,
They're in jails and courts sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes.
So if they get released prior to going to court, but
I think the assessment, you should have like 2 divisions, right? You have somebody doing the assessment and the supervision.
yeah, but they may get released before they have that first appearance in court. They will have seen the magistrate
So where does your assessments occur? That's, yeah,
and two.
in 2, okay.
And I'm talking about our new process.
And the supervision at 3 would still count, because with the new process, they could have pretrial assignment at the magistrate, right?
Mhm.
Theoretically, okay.
Jail-based case managers? I thought jail was 2, no? No?
I just looked it up. 2 is initial detention, initial court hearings. 3 is jails, courts.
We made our own, didn't we?
And some are in more than one place, which is why.
Yeah, that's true too.
But kind of like where it starts, and then we know it might continue on.
So 4 is kind of like our courts, our treatment courts, adult drug treatment, sobriety, veterans, SOAR, family, drug. The focus, deterrence, DD accountability, where does that fall? That post conviction or is it pre-trial? It's post.
Post.
That's probation.
Oh, I think I know, okay, all right.
It's part of the deal for civil cases. The civil fine, if the judge orders them to give
So like, this
it
is,
better treatment.
this is post conviction. Expunction falls after, right, if they're eligible. But we have the services available in the county. We've done amnesty days, is that over here? Prison reentry services? That's 5 and 6. Can you guys think of any other services in the probation?
Prison reentry is us.
Yes, prison, okay.
I think 6 though is when they're coming out of prison, I think.
But we supervise them.
Right, so I think that's why she moved it to 6 though. It's still community corrections, but it's at the point, the intercepts are at the point that individuals coming in and out of the criminal or the justice system. So I think the idea is like 6 is when they're walking out the door, the individual will be on community corrections, but that's when they would be referred to the reentry program. Same with task, don't you think? That could be 5 or 6, right? They're either just on probation and you refer them to task, or upon release from prison, they might get referred to task. Does that sound right? Cause some corrections is, they never even go into custody, but some is, you get them when they come out.
Can we go over and just say which each intercept is, just so we're all clear on which each one is also, so we're all settled?
Rice, no, pre-arrest, law enforcement intervention, jail,
That's the initial detention.
Initial
First
detention.
hearing. Initial court hearings.
3,
Jails and courts. So they might not be in jail, but they're involved in the court system.
okay, so that's 4,
Reentry.
So, I don't know where 6 came from, but on 6, I'm on the Policy Research Associates brochure right now.
is that with
and it's-
0? They have a
It's
0?
got 0 and then it ends at 5.
Okay, I just put a 6 because she had another column. Okay,
You know what my 6 is gonna be? Supportive services.
there you go.
There we go.
Well played.
So how are the treatment courts
They need to
not
be over here
community
then.
supervision when I have 12 specialty staff in all your courts? So that we can't supervise regular probationers, but that's not.
Not leaving. So it's
Just
like,
asking.
literally, it's right in here, I guess.
I would say 4 or 5.
More,
Cause you have,
4 and 5?
move it over.
Yeah, they're not in there if we don't have them.
It's 4 and 5.
okay. Well, Judge, this is
So are all
simple.
the courts that you have up under 4 ones that have to be kind of referred to? And so that's where 3 is they're in the system and then they get moved over to a
Mine-
specialty
mine
court?
are.
Is that how you?
Yeah.
What are those treatment courts, we
Those
didn't do
are-
those courts,
they're
they're all
post-
for the post-conviction.
Thank you.
Except for
I don't know where it goes. Oh, you know what? It's in six. What? This is where we are. There's a lot going on, isn't it? Does everyone know what these things are that we have in Buckingham County? Did y'all know these existed? Staff research? Okay. All right.
Are you including juvenile court at all in this? I know they're in the potential bylaws and who's supposed to be somewhere, and I know over there you've got the school justice, which is more of a DJJ, but I don't see juveniles necessarily here.
Yes. What are the juvenile stuff that's going on? Oh, it's on the JCPC and another purple of it.
We have a juvenile justice mental health substance use partnership at Maya that includes all of our DJJ chiefs and mental health providers, and we do a lot of things.
What is it called?
Juvenile justice, substance abuse, mental health partnership. I'm the chair of that. We meet every quarter. JJSAMHP is what J stands for. That's what it's called. Say that an acronym, please. JJSAMHP.
Quarterly?
We meet quarterly, and we have actually, a single point assessment model where any youth who comes into contact with juvenile justice who's not already connected to a mental health provider can get an assessment at juvenile justice by youth villages. They refer them to services and we track the heck out of them and make sure they make it from that initial assessment into treatment. We track their outcomes. We make sure all the processes are streamlined and information is being shared. So there's a lot of oversight of that process.
You have that formally written on it?
We have an MO, oh, the description, I can get you one.
We at JCPC there? Should we have it? Who else? Can someone, oh, Diana, aren't you on the JCPC?
Mm-hmm. What would you like me to speak to?
Whatever you got, what, tell the group. Does everyone know what it is?
Juvenile crime
no one
prevention.
knows?
Yeah, juvenile
Crime prevention.
crime prevention, yeah. I'm new to the group, but we're in the process of looking at our planning and funding for the upcoming year. And they fund a variety of community-based, services for juveniles, both on the prevention side, but also the response.
And the focus is on preventing recidivism, so that's sort of where those funds come from, and we take the funds that come from the state, and there's allocations that are made. We're in the middle of doing allocations because of the change with raise the age. The budget right now had been for a certain age group with certain needs, and now we're recognizing there are gonna be additional needs with our 16 and 17-year-olds, so there's a, expansion of programs like teen court, and then there's also newer programs coming in because school is an issue versus people who are not required to be in school, and what stick do you give them, so do they need job training and those sort of things. So there's a annual workforce subcommittees that really go through the allocations for the programs. We have models to make sure the programs are evidence-based. If they're not evidence-based, we have specs, which are something I cannot remember what they're standing for, but a lot of kind of objective criteria used to choose what is used in our county and how it will assist our juveniles services where you think about Children First or Trinity Place or Kids at Work and several of those other programs, those are all JCPC funded programs.
I'm missing any other, besides teen court and, we don't, and I don't wanna, I'm not proposing this, but we don't have a treatment court for juveniles, do we?
Juvenile justice is based as a treatment court. That's why we work with our continuum for our juveniles, so anyone who's coming through that court we were just having this discussion the other day, but it is not about how much time you serve, it's about what you need for both rehabilitation and treatment, as well as, and that's the whole theory behind juvenile justice.
Can I make a comment? Cause a lot of people were involved in the SIM mapping that we did, and this may be somewhat a new concept, but just a note on fidelity. So the SIM map, which is 0 through 5, this is the philosophy. There are certain points that people with mental health and substance use disorders are coming in and out of the criminal justice system. Where can we plug services in at the different intercepts to try to catch them, pull them out, and keep them out? So what we're doing here is we're kind of using it as a foundation for a system map, which is different. And I just want to highlight that because there are SIM mapping for special populations. So for instance, I'm getting some resources now. We may be doing through our crisis work group a SIM mapping for opiate resources. There's also you can do a SIM mapping for juvenile resources. And I say that because a lot of the things you're listing in orange would be at 0 if you were doing a map for juvenile resources. Where are the points that juveniles are coming in and out of the system, and what do we have in place to plug it? And I think the work group, Judge Dotson-Smith, that you and Judge Hill are involved in, is gonna be really filling in a lot of those gaps because of Raise the Age. So it might be something to think about doing down the road would be a youth SIM mapping. But just to make sure everybody's understands, this is about where whatever population you're defining is coming in and out, and how do we improve those resources. So just so you know, we're blending.
For the sake of time, the underway things are, some of them, most of them are safety and justice challenges, some are not. So court reminder, we will be implementing that with pretrial, people assigned to pretrial. For those that are not, we'll enhance AOC system. We're gonna promote the use of AOC system so our community at large can have access to getting court notification reminders. We're doing a lot of efforts in community engagement using safety and justice challenge resources. The racial equity work group is moving along with their work and recommendations. School to justice partnership. So one of the things we talked about is improving outcomes for youth. There's already a template in place to do that. So just kind of adopting what other counties and what AOC's vision for our partnerships are. And then shortly, we will be implementing the public safety assessment and hopefully updating or revising the current bail bond policy to kind of align with the implementation of the PSA at the magistrate's level. Anything else I'm missing that is under, kind of what the county is helping support the justice system do? Not necessarily what's going on in an individual's office, but I know you guys have a lot of great things, work happening as well. Miss anything?
So I have a question, but I think I'll take you back over here.
Okay.
Cause it's a lot of things, there's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have a mechanism to determine if any of these are successful? And we're doing it, but is it working? And so if it's working, we should be either increasing our resources or making sure we maintain them. If it's not working, we should talk about why it's not working and whether or not, I'm not saying not do any of this, but I'm just saying, is there a way to evaluate the performance of all these programs?
Mm-hmm. There is a way.
Are we doing it?
Capacity and resources. So that's a good point. Maybe that's something we can build into the action plan and time frames of how things are getting. So most of these things are contracted and there are performance measures put in place, but are we intentionally evaluating as a stakeholder, as someone using the services? We can probably increase that. And that's probably something that we really need to put on our plan.
Would that be a task that this body would would do, evaluate the programs for effectiveness.
Mhm. And
I think they have to.
we kind of did that with the diversion programs, I believe in June or July. Kendra and Justin both came to talk about, the diversion programs. Do you guys who are here remember that? We have not done that with all of them, so that's something that definitely we should explore. You want to say something? Underway. These possible new are three things that have just been topics of conversation and interest. And that's the law enforcement assistant development program, so finding out what does that mean for Buncombe County, if that's something that is needed, what population, resources available to divert individuals, and making sure, we understand how it can look in Buncombe County. Every jurisdiction, although there's kind of like this lead copyright, their population they serve may be a little bit different based on the needs in their community. So it's important we do a community needs assessment. And then conversation about restorative justice. There are practices happening in the school, talked about that last meeting. So what does that look like for Buncombe County? There's jurisdictions that have formalized it in their criminal justice system. So,
I do have a question or comment now. So going back to, you said we have a way to evaluate it, right? So when do we see that, or have we seen it, I missed it, and what were the next steps needing to be taken? Let's say we are meeting something, right? I know that we said we're doing it, but I would like to see what we're doing, and I would like to see, I'm not necessarily want to see the numbers, but I do want to see the numbers, if that makes sense.
I think, and I would love to hear from y'all, maybe this is the next JRAC meeting conversation, is how the material is presented. We do issue an annual report for the programs that the county funds. We have opportunities for the, like, diversion programs to come before and present about what's going on. But, and we have the contracts that performance measures are in place. But I would love to hear how this body would want to get the information and do the assessments. I think that's up to you all. What does that evaluation look like?
One of the things we do at JCPC is, we kind of highlight our program every time you have your board meeting. And so
Mhm.
that way, there's sort of a way to kind of bring it in, and that may be helpful for you all.
You know, with the court programs like drug treatment, sobriety, veterans treatment, they all have their statistics. You just need to ask them, and they can give you their success rates and what's occurred. A lot of the things under three, I think, have just been funded, so we probably don't have enough time under our belt yet to see how that's working. So, yeah. When did the public defender get the social worker?
Last year.
The last year. And the prosecutor, when it was early this year, wasn't it?
The safety and justice funded one early this year, but there's been two that's been in place since 17. And I think we can pull together some information. And I know, a part, especially the jail base, is looking at trends and like jail bed capacity,
Right.
how many pleas and bed. So yes, it seems like we can get the data available to you all and maybe highlighting each specific thing.
Yeah, but just the number of beds that are being used wouldn't really tell you how successful those things were. You'd have to know how many they actually touched.
Yes, it's I guess a blend of both.
But not so much for a year or annual. I would like to know, can we do something like 3 months, 6 months, right? And then maybe we need more resources. And if I get into something, I may need more. And then I won't be able to come back and ask for more, or maybe get into something I don't need as much. That I would like to be able to say, I don't need as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of these, and I'm not necessarily saying about the courts, but some of these programs, I think, we need some more collaboration and help, if you will, to make things work, to be more effective.
at least the JRC services, public facing dashboards that we'll update quarterly. The more resources, we can also talk about like transparency and updating.
Reallocation of that?
Yes. Evaluation does take staff resources, the point I'm making. It's important when we think about building new programs, that we build in fidelity, and we build in the capability to evaluate, we're not just, yes.
And I would just highlight, the county had invested heavily in adding the apricot database that the FJC's been using for a lot of these programs, and I know all the programs at the JRC, all the drug courts, and the jail-based people, we're all putting data in apricot, and Lee's been, and poor Tiffany, monumental in helping us build these, cause they all have to look different, cause each program's different and they're each siloed. And we've just hit a year of pretty solid data entry for some programs, not all. And what that's gonna allow us to do, correct me if I'm wrong, is Lee can pull, what we've done traditionally because of capacity is track outcome data. And that's not the same as evaluating, right? So a group like this can set some benchmarks. We wanna see at least this many, this many, this many. That's interesting, but it's still just kind of widgets, right? What Lee can do with our apricot data is he can look up someone who comes into the jail, see what programs they touched if they're in apricot, and we can start to evaluate, if you participated in this, did you get worse or did you get better? And I know for the jail programs, that's what we're gonna do with our specific groups. We've got, this is just one example, evidence-based groups. If we find that everybody that went through MRT gets arrested 5 times more, then we'll quit doing MRT. You know, so I think we'll have a will you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say with apricot and the expansion of apricot to these other programs, that's really gonna enhance our capacity to trace individual outcomes. Like Amy was saying, it's been more of those high level kind of programmatic outcomes that have been reported out to the county, that now we're able to tease it out and see, okay, well, how many involvements did this person have post completion of X program? That sort of thing. But it does take a while to build up enough data, right, then to make some conclusions. So we're in that process now.
For me, it's important to do some evaluation of current programs. I heard it's important for us to look at our values and make sure they incorporate into our objectives, including like the equity and community engagement piece. Where else are we going from here? There's a lot of like momentum and ideas on the forefront, but are we there yet? And need to hear from you guys, what are we putting in this plan and what are we focusing on? Are there any common themes emerging with all the work that we're doing, and are we headed in the right direction? These are all open-ended questions. And I would like to leave here with something tangible to give back to you all.
Do we need to agree that on those 3 possible new projects, is that part of the task?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Element.
Where are we going? Yeah, where are we going? And are we even adding new? Are we saying, you know what, let's take a year to, okay, I see.
Evaluate.
We gotta let you finish that. We gotta.
We're not taking a year.
So of those 3, which one, if we had to prioritize those 3 new projects, how would we prioritize them as a group?
Can you read those again, because I can't even see them here?
Is lead law enforcement, forget what lead stands for, law assistant diversion, restorative justice, and driver's license restoration.
I think to prioritize driver's license restoration, we would need the input of the district attorney's office. And
operating.
Right now, your license is restored,
And our judges are very good at striking the called and fails to allow somebody to get their license, so those things are already happening. I'm not
Do
sure.
people know about it? And so being in like two spaces of like getting input and then trying to say, okay, we're doing that. I think we talked about this before Ronnie passed away, that no one knows about it. So then they don't take that step in getting it restored and end up still driving around and getting the license revoked again and just, everybody shaking their head.
So,
Yeah.
but then if they're getting restored at that point, then there's not been a time where the law enforcement's gotten involved. You know what I mean? Like, so that's even pre-charged, because once they get charged, they now know about it. So if you're talking about even before then, I'm not sure what kind of program you could have that would involve this group that would have a criminal involvement at all.
Well, and,
Once they get charged, then they now know about it.
there's these two different things that I've been hearing that's more maybe on the statewide level, and so I don't know, because I'm in family court, how this interacts, except that I see it with our abuse neglect parents who are in desperate need of getting driver's licenses. I understand that there's an initiative from the Chief Justice's level down that is with churches and faith that are clinics, that are driver's restoration clinics, and but then I also am on the pro bono committee locally for our bar, and we've been talking about trying to understand that versus kind of the amnesty day in terms of, it seems like there are models across the state for doing a one-day thing where it's the DA's power that helps us get it done, and you do a whole lot more effectively, it's a little more efficient, which is one of the words I know is out there on their mission. So I don't necessarily understand the scope, and it may be an information education thing of what the challenge is in Buncombe versus what is perceived as a trend statewide maybe. But I did want to throw, I know the pro bono committee was looking at opportunities where lawyers could possibly help, and that's almost on the civil side, getting back to your zero level of what to do with it or where it would come in. But you know, it's definitely something that we're hearing about from a different area.
Some of that could also come from the people coming out of prison, because there for a while, some of these places had mobile DMV places that would actually drive up to the prison where they're getting out and trying to get that all fixed out. So that might be part of the after part in lieu of, say, beforehand.
One of the things is that the DMV is the agency that allows the privilege, no matter what the judge says. If the DMV says no, I mean, people get limited privileges, and the DMV says they do not have a driver's license, even though they have a judge saying it, because the rules of the DMV are different. And people drive all over the state, and they have stuff all over the state, and the judge here may be looking at what's going on in Buncombe County, doesn't know what all has happened in the rest of the state necessarily. They can get a report, that doesn't tell them what's actively pending necessarily. So what we're doing here is probably as good as you're gonna see without some sort of widespread statewide initiative to get the DMV on board to have recognized that when the judge says this person needs to drive, and they need to let them drive. But right now they say, no, we've got the rules, you don't get to drive. And then you get to go over to Patton Avenue and talk to somebody who doesn't understand anything, and they just say, no, you can't.
I think there's opportunity to explore and help improve some things, but we might.
Absolutely agreed. However, when you're determining priority, when you're already establishing that that's moving along the criminal system very well and good results, then it might not be the number one priority.
I think that's a community, I think you're right, it's more widespread. The issue is not, I guess, being in the criminal justice system, the issue is that we have a contingent of the population that don't have a driver's license. And if I'm afraid to drive, I can't get to work. So then there's an economic piece of that. So it's definitely more widespread than just the criminal justice system. And it would include the state. We did a clinic for restoration in Lake when I was there. And the first thing we did was go to the Secretary of State and make sure that he supported it and make sure whatever we were developing at the local level is something that he could get behind. So it's definitely a multi-entity partnership.
Right, so then if you're also including, pre-criminal intervention, then expunctions, same thing, same concept.
And so maybe there's a capacity to build on what we already have related to expunction.
If it's even possible, then.
So for the sake of time, we have a lot of information. Strategic planning doesn't happen in one session, because we run from the county, but we are building upon some things that we can work and continue to improve on. So 2 things about January meeting, it's like 2 days after New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and then we propose new bylaws, and then that new proposal, y'all wanna do bi-monthly, our next meeting will be in February. 20, up at 19? 2020. I'm not there yet, I'm still in this. So, consensus group, all in support of February being our next JRAC meeting?
Yes.
You look disappointed, Sheriff, you're in the district attorney's office, yeah, no, that was not consensus, we're meeting in January?
Or a later date in January, or?
I can't get consensus on a meeting.
Might be a sign.
We need to vote.
He just broke down, he said that word.
That's how consensus works.
Oh, you know, but, I should say the steering committee, yeah, it's gonna be work to be done, so it might not be an official JRAC meeting, we might have a steering committee, or, I know y'all got work groups too, same thing, Justice Challenge, all these other.
So your official next meeting will be February?
For the whole body. Pat? Leanne, PD's office?
Whatever you need,
What?
to make sure someone has someone there. I don't wanna speak personally for Ms. Mountain.
That's why you hear you speak up, you got this 30 minutes to speak.
We always try to have someone here at these meetings, so if you have it in January, we'll be here, if everyone wants February, we'll be here too.
Oh, yeah, forgot,
Just see what she says. We got all these subs in the room.
we meet February, January.
I think there's a lot of work, honestly, I would go with January.
You would?
And I think that's a good point, because I think oftentimes we meet monthly. What happens in between, I know Tiffany does a lot of work in between. And I know we have these subcommittees, but we have the subcommittees because of the grant right now. Probably makes sense for those subcommittees to live on in some format, because after 2 years, we won't have the grant. And so there needs to be some acknowledgement that there's work that happens in between the meetings, and who's doing the work? Are we doing it through committees? Are we doing it as an executive committee, et cetera? Because in my mind, I'm thinking about we need to develop something to bring back to this group based on that. And maybe it's just not you or I, or maybe someone else wants to volunteer to refine the bylaws and all that other stuff to help support that. Just a thought.
We're doing that in January? People will show up at this meeting. But no, then people don't show up and they sit in.
I mean, not the whole body, because, you know.
I mean, the staff team can help support Tiffany in drafting some materials to bring before the group and just kind of have ready to mobilize on or tweak in January if we want. Or we could meet a different Friday in January. That's not the Friday after a holiday.
Second Friday in January?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Amnesty Day, Todd proposes one for the end of the year. Our last one was January 25th.
So also they had a minister meeting, if you call it, and they're interested in hosting amnesty program in one of the churches.
Good, in the community.
I don't know what that means for, because before we talked about it, and everyone started saying we can't do it because of lack of connections for computers. So I don't know if that still exists. I just know that a few of the ministers, and I directed them, I don't know if he received the message or not. But they are very interested in hosting an amnesty day at one of the local churches.
Great to know. Seems like we're all in support. We'll nail down the dates. We'll work with, okay, great.
Last thing, I'm gonna let the sheriff take us out with this thing that's coming next week. Please pay attention, need most of you here, there.
Just know that we need to see y'all on Saturday, and that's, upcoming Saturday,
Keep going.
next Saturday, next Saturday. But anyway, this is about, a gentleman by the name of Saul Paul. While we was out in Houston, we were able to, be entertained on some aspect, and then again, informed and educated on some of the things that he brought to life. And some of this is about his life story, and I know some of us, so it's just another story. But he tells a story about how he, basically at 17, he was, arrested. And so he also goes on to tell you he ended up doing time in the penitentiary, and he was extremely smart, that his, mother died when he was, 3. His father never was in his life, which is a, we could say a norm. And then he says that his grandmother raised him. And his grandmother, he said there was a 65-year gap between the two. He said he was hard-headed, she was soft-hearted. And he said that, he made honor roll. His grandmother would actually post his grades on the wall at home. And he would have friends over, and the friends would be telling him, like, man, what's wrong with you? That's stupid, or whatever the case may be. And so he said he started getting into the life of crime, if you will. And when he went out there, everyone embraced him. Because the feds came to pick him up at school. And after they picked him up, he started being, being the guy, the man, as he would say it, because he had not been arrested. And so he goes to tell a story about how, why the drug dealers sell drugs. And the answer was, make money. He said he was so smart, he decided to cut out the middleman. So he started making money. And what happened was, he really was making money. And the feds came to get him, and he ended up in the penitentiary. And so he also tells you that he graduated from Austin, Texas University with a 4.0. And now he went on to American Has Talent. And when he goes on the show, he wins. And he's been at like 4 or 5 different Super Bowls. And now the CEOs of these different companies ask him to come and speak. And he says it's very interesting because when he goes and speaks to these different corporations, he can't even work at their factories. Why? Because he has 4 felonies. And he wants to share that with our young people, some of that story, some of that narrative. But he also does something on restorative justice, which I'm very interested in. And why? Because obviously, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but for me, I need more education on what restorative justice is and what does that mean to Boston County. And so,
Thursday event. You getting there? You building? I'm sorry.
Where's Saul Paul gonna be though? I don't see it where specifically you go.
so that's, go ahead. I'll let you fill that in.
I'll give you, so Thursday and Friday, we're doing 2 workshops for our court partners, sheriff's training room, either or. So if you can't make lunch on Thursday, come Friday.
If that's where Saul Paul will be?
Yes, it's his team, yes, and he's gonna talk about the restorative ecosystem and how to build that. And then on Saturday, that's the sheriff's office talking about, it's a festival for the youth and
For the community.
for the community.
And so what we have so far is we have, for the first 300 or so families that, sign up, they're actually gonna have door prizes. Some of those, I think it's $100, some of it's on there, but it's $100 for several folks. They're giving away, 3 or 4 big screen TVs. And so this is, we're turning this into a big event. I've spoken to not only, the PD, they're on board, but I've also spoken to the school system, both city and county. We talked to United Way, and so we're trying to make this a big event, not only for the justice, restorative justice, but we wanna make something for our entire community. And here's our opportunity, that we have a national speaker, if you will, and someone who can reach our young people. He's demonstrated that, because he's been here twice. Came in, it was Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday. We took him to the school. When we took him up to the school, he had a conversation with a young person there, which I thought was really went well. But more than that, the fact that he's willing to come here, he's willing to come and share, and he's also talking about how do we do a program or something that he could come back at a later date. So I'm very excited about it, and I would ask that he great, but also when we have that restorative justice, I'll be there for that one. And so, if you would come, I'll leave a treat and, teach y'all, have y'all lunch. So please come, I will do that.
Diana's working on the Eventbrite, because we wanna make sure it's 50 spots in each, and we're working with county PR and sheriff's office. So more information to come by Monday. Monday.
Yeah.
And the next, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go.
I was just gonna say, next Friday, Corey Wise will be, it'll be held at Bayhack through, my daddy taught me that.
Yes,
And
we'll be
he's
there.
the 16-year-old that served adult time as part of the servant part-time. And I think a lot of the resources will go towards my sister and my daddy taught me that.
Any other announcements that we need to know about before the holidays and?
I would like to introduce our new employee.
Yes, thank you.
This is Taylor Brickley, and Taylor, has been with us now for, are we going on 5 weeks?
We are.
Okay, 5 weeks. But he began his career in criminal justice in probation, and then he decided to go, and then he worked in, Child Protective Services, and then he decided to go back to school and get his, doctorate, and he's been teaching at Mars Hill and Western for the last few years. But he is now on board with us as our new pretrial services supervisor.
Yeah, the
So
supervisor
please
now,
welcome
Taylor.
Taylor.
Where are you in the pretrial, hiring for your other staff?
We have identified, 6 people we want to hire. And so we are moving them through that hiring process with HR, and, we should be sending out offers, in the next day, well, Monday or Tuesday next week, most likely.
And we'll have our, trainings for the PSA?
Yes, yes, and we'll be sending out invitations for those. We have changed the date of those trainings since it conflicted with the state training, and so we bumped it, we're gonna do it a week earlier, on Wednesday and Thursday, so we'll send out invitations.
Before you guys get the invitation for Thursday and Friday, I'm gonna just send you an event calendar, so you can block it off. All right, see y'all.